still now in my 60s, I kind of go, oh, okay, you don't play, find somebody else. Right? But I'm not being negative. I'm just going, right now, I'll still go and play with those people in any case. So just little quick.
Many people spend years trying to fit into spaces that we were never designed for them. Today's guest, Gry Stene, has spent over 4 decades working in innovation and transformation. But one of her most powerful transformations she experienced was personal. After years of feeling like an outsider, navigating burnout, business failure, and the pressure to constantly perform, Gry discovered that the very traits she tried to hide were actually her greatest strengths. Today, she helps people and organisations celebrate differences rather than suppress it, encouraging others to lead from their lived experiences and unique perspective. Gry is the author of Full Throttle and Talk, a book that shares her journey of reinvention and learning to trust her so-called neurospicy wiring. Gry, welcome to Positive Vibes with Nicki Dennis.
Thank you very much, Nicki. That's a long-winded introduction, isn't it?
Giving a little bit of a background about you, Gry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
So, Gry, many people carry the quiet feeling of being different. When you look back at your life, when did you first notice that sense of being an outsider?
It's a really good question, and as you alluded to my book before, I've just written the book and released like the last 2 years, and that's kind of when I started looking at things. So when I come from a very big boisterous family from near the Arctic Circle in Norway, so the Midnight Sun, and we all talk about everything and anything, and I thought that was normal, right? So we
Mhm.
all, but then there's some complications with that. So, but I also grew up with a father who was an alcoholic. So as
Mm,
the oldest, I kind of had to do a lot of shape shifting, but I didn't think that it was unusual. I didn't think I was different, but I was always striving to belong. So for me, it's all about
mm.
belonging,
Yeah.
right? And so yeah, I knew I was different, but that was cool, right? This
Mm,
is in my family. It was kind of we were encouraged to be our unique selves, and you know, full throttle. But we didn't use those terms in those days. But it
yeah.
was there was a lot of noise and things. But it was kind of probably that as a little girl, having to navigate this kind of there's a bit of shame around people who've got alcoholism, and then we had to move a lot.
Mm,
So we moved um, every few years, and I had to get new friends and that sort of stuff. So it's I would say probably quite early, but it didn't bother me. Does that
mm.
make sense? Right?
Yeah.
So I knew I was different, but it was okay.
Yeah.
But then later in life, it became a bigger. Then
Yeah.
it became like a problem. I
Yeah.
became a problem.
Yeah. So just leading into that. So how did that you talk about it was a feeling of belonging. So how did that feeling shape your confidence and identity as you move through your career and life?
I, you know what it shaped is this so I guess I always try to fit in, and you don't
Mm,
know this, but I've discovered this when I was writing my book that I'm probably and I'm self-diagnosed and peer-reviewed. We call this as neurospicy people, but I'm probably quite high on the autism spectrum as well. So I kind of um uh shape shifted, and I tried to kind of make sure that I became a people pleaser and
mm,
a human doing, not a human being. So it sort of shaped that, but I was still very confident if you so
mm,
on the outside, but what people didn't see was that little voice, that those little visions inside always pushing you down. And
mm,
I should bring in slightly different thing here as well, because you've got the tall poppy syndrome here in Australia. We've got
mm,
something called janteloven in Norway, which is probably as bad, if not worse,
mm,
when it comes to shutting people down that are too tall, if you like. So,
mhm,
so it's kind of it was always a balancing thing, but I'm quite good at balancing.
mhm. Yeah.
So positive outlook on life.
Yeah. I just listening to you hear about the shape shifting and being confident. There's probably a lot of people out there that resonate with you in regards to
Mm,
people pleasing, shape shifting, being confident on the outside, but yeah, knowing that
mm,
there's sort of a person inside that's not so confident, yeah, portraying something else. So
mm.
what do you wish people understood about the hidden impact of feeling like you sometimes don't quite fit in?
Uh, I think the main thing that happens to all of us, and I was just out with in a book club yesterday, and we were just
Mm,
talking about this. One of the guys had read a book called "The Gift of Not Belonging," and I'm going, "Oh my
mm,
gosh, you need to read my book too." But we were talking about how, and also one of the other books was about productivity and things, and we were talking about this constant need to fit in, if you like, and do, all these pressures we put on ourselves, right?
mm,
And what I usually say to people is, those pressures, the other people don't probably think that of you. That they, oh my gosh, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not whatever. Nobody
mm,
else thinks that. It's inside your head. So if we could look at ourselves through other people's eyes instead,
mm,
that's what I kind of, my biggest piece of advice is kind of, you know what? Other people don't see you through those critical eyes that you've kind
mm.
of developed over time, even as a child. So that would be my biggest take out there.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so true. You know, we're always our biggest critic and always think that,
Mm,
and it's that self-talk in our head
mm,
and the stories that we make up in our head, what people perceive, we think people perceive from us, which is probably the
yeah,
opposite, as you said.
sometimes.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
I had some situations where I was in this group of my crew, my tribe, if you like, and
yeah.
I distinctly felt that I did not fit in. I did not fit in. And these people were kind of going, well, I don't understand that because we all love you. And I'm going, well, I can't say that because the way you're behaving is not congruent. So as somebody who identifies as on the autism spectrum, I can
Yeah.
pick up signals. And when there's incongruence between what you see and what you hear, it becomes
Mm,
a scary space, right? It
yeah,
becomes a fearful space where you kind of you're trying to
yeah,
read the read the room,
yeah.
and I
And
can
make,
read it, but I don't know
mm,
how to deal with it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And with reading it, would you think that you were actually interpreting it right, or were you getting some mixed messages there?
I think I was interpreting some of it right,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
there is a there's a big cultural difference between Norway and Australia in terms of how we
Mm,
communicate.
yeah,
Um, um, and in actual fact, there's a big difference. So I studied in the UK, but there's a big difference between how they communicate in the north of UK and in the south of UK, where the north is a lot more honest and direct,
yes.
sort of thing. Whereas there's a lot of sugar coating, and that's very difficult to kind of know if it is. But I've seen behaviors that don't belong anywhere from people that I know they
Mm,
like me, but they
yeah,
just don't get that. So I don't know if that answers your question.
yeah.
I go off on a
So,
few tangents. That's how my
yeah.
brain works.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So you talk openly about the pressure to mask parts of yourself in the professional
Mm,
environments.
mm,
What did
mm.
that experience look like for you?
Well, I wasn't very good at masking in the beginning because so I came, I'm Norwegian, come from this very loud, boisterous family, very egalitarian in Norway. Men and women are very equal. I mean, more than here anyway.
Yeah.
Um, the women still carry most of the burden of health and well-being and all that, and family and that sort of stuff, but still, it's much more even. And so when I came to Australia in '96, and I worked in the tech industry, so I
Yeah.
worked in the software industry all my life, maybe 10, maybe 20% women if we're lucky. But because I was also so I'm a software engineer by background, so
Mhm.
I was more in a man's role. It was kind of, I thought I should be treated as an equal, like just as a human, right?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget my first boss. He actually pulled me into the room and into his office and said, "Oh, I don't want you to share your opinions in our group meetings." And I'm going,
Oh,
but I've worked for this company for 5 years overseas, right? Why not? And because we can learn from it. And he goes, "Oh no, no, Australians don't like to be told that things have been done before." And I'm going, well, that doesn't make sense to me. So I went on a tirade, sort of thing. And then he says, "Well, I'd like you to. It would be nice if you could salute me." Now I'm sure he said it tongue in cheek, but this was a very overtly sexist environment that I
yeah.
was working in, and it wasn't just that this wasn't male or female. I just thought nobody can say that to me in a work environment. So I ended up leaving, and um, that was kind of the beginning of the spark that then later, many, many, many years later, became the title and my book. So that's how my book opens, with this road trip I did after that.
Oh,
Freedom.
freedom. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Gry, how does constantly trying to fit into expectations affect people emotionally and mentally over time?
Hmm. It's it can be exhausting, right?
Mm,
It can be really exhausting. It's and and I don't think it's something anybody does consciously,
no.
right? You don't try to fit in. It's just something you do because you want to be liked or whatever. Like I've got rejection sensitivity, so I'm going, oh, I'm always scanning for whether people like me or not. Whether
Mm,
they do or not doesn't really matter. But what I perceive. So to your question before, where you were asking, do you think you're reading the room right? Sometimes not. Sometimes I
mm,
did. Um, so I just think it can be really, really exhausting and cause, sleep issues and other, um, you know, gut issues, that sort of stuff,
yeah.
the anxiety and stress of it. And I kind of, burnout eventually. I have several friends that have had burnout. I would say that I
Mm,
probably have too, but I just ignore those kind of things, right? So, but it can cause severe, it can end up with PTSD as well
mm,
from those kind of things, because you're always second guessing yourself,
yeah.
right? So it doesn't have to be a single thing that happens. It's just a constant kind of thing. And I'm not a medical professional. I'm a software engineer, right? I
Yeah.
just have opinions.
Yeah.
So and lived experiences, I guess. So I think
Yeah. It can affect you in a big
yeah,
way. Yeah.
yeah.
And I must say, picking up on what you said before, did you read the room right? Because again, I believe that, and we're all got energy, and sometimes
Mm,
someone's negative energy that we could be
mm.
think that's towards us is just their negative energy just
Might be just
exuding
having
from
a
them, and it's them,
yeah,
it's not you. Where I used to,
yeah,
because I'm very
yeah.
sensitive to energy, pick up when I walk in a room thinking, oh,
Mm.
they don't like me, they don't like me, but it was actually their energy. It wasn't that they didn't like me. They actually liked me, but it was just they oozed negative energy. But it's
Yeah,
taken me, to get in my 50s to work that out. So it's taken
yeah,
me a
yeah,
while.
yeah. Man, welcome
So
to the 60s for me.
yeah, I'm not far from there. So
Yeah.
when did you begin to realize that the effort to hide your differences was actually draining your energy, as you mentioned?
Well, considering that I didn't really realize that I was hiding, but I was, then
Mm,
I would say that I was fine up until COVID.
mm,
And then I started a new business, a social enterprise, on the 18th of February 2020.
hmm.
And then we know what happened after that. That was a month before everything went into lockdown here in Perth, at least, right?
Yeah.
And everybody disappeared, right?
Mm,
I'm also an extreme extrovert, so I get my energy from people. So
ah,
here I was in my own little home office by myself. Everybody that I'd talked with had disappeared. For 18 months, people just kind of disappeared. The
mm,
community I was in, like there was nothing happening. I'm okay in terms that I can actually connect and get energy through the screen, because I've worked through the screen my entire career, right?
Yeah.
But I had to make a conscious effort of that. So but that was when I realized that it had taken a toll, and but then I started hiding even more, because when your business doesn't take off the way that you had thought it was going to,
Yeah.
for whatever reasons, no matter how big the pandemic or the drama is, you start second guessing yourself and doubting yourself. And that's when you kind of, I would say that I fell into some quite deep distress almost, right? Because of that, because you're kind of going, okay, well, I need to earn money. Well, how am I going to do that? And things. And I've tried. I worked very, very hard, but it's just been evading me and things. But then I've written a book.
Yeah.
So I have used the time wisely. I've kind of set up a lot of different things. So I've got tons of resources, but it was really then that it kind of became quite obvious to me that I have some underlying mental health. It was only when my siblings got diagnosed with ADHD and other neurodivergent traits, and that said, my brother said, "Oh, are you sure you don't want to check things? Check that you've got." Oh, it's a superpower, I say.
It is. It
And
is.
it is, until you mix it with burnout. Right?
Exactly.
Until you mix it with something else, then, but it's wonderful, right? And
Yeah.
so it was kind of that awareness, and then I kind of went, okay, well, all right. And then when you're navel gazing and writing a book, because it's kind of is a little bit of navel gazing, you go, oh my gosh, all these different things. Oh, did I actually do that? Did I actually say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I'm a glass half full. I'm a very positive person. I bring energy and enthusiasm to
Yeah.
everything that I do, but it doesn't mean that there's not an undercurrent.
Yeah. So just
That
further
sits
on when, the rise and fall of your health tech startup business that you
there.
ultimately had to close,
Yeah.
what did that chapter teach you about your resilience and self-worth there? Because again, it was at the time, as you said, was COVID.
That was before COVID,
Oh, that was
actually.
before
Yeah, it
COVID,
was
that
before
one.
COVID,
Yeah. So
actually. So
what?
yeah, but that probably I did get a few scars from there as well, because that was another business. So that was in the mid to 2013, 14. Yeah. Um, that was an interesting one to deal with, because there were people gaslighting. And when you're already critical of yourself,
Yeah.
and you get told, or as I've heard, you're not technical enough, you're not a good presenter, you're not very good at dealing with your staff, that sort of stuff, you go, oh, maybe I'm not. Oh, you go, well, why are you saying that? That sort of. So that was but what did it teach me about my resilience is that I kind of need to go away and think about. I wish I had that I had ChatGPT in those days, because I could have asked them if you've done some deeper research. I did do a lot of research, but that thing that you just mentioned before as well about it's them, not you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's something, because I fix things.
Yeah.
I fix things, and then oh, hang on, I can't fix that. Oh, okay. So I think the best piece of advice somebody gave me is a really dear friend of mine. She said, and this was in a different situation, but she said, when somebody had been sort of disrespecting and yeah, been really quite nasty, she said, "Oh, you don't have to take it personally." I'm going, "Yeah, but it's meant personally." And then she goes, "But you still don't have to take it personally." I'm like, okay. So I think that's kind of one of the really nice things that I share with other people, because I think it's just such a wise thing to say.
Yeah. Great advice, your friend. Great advice. Because
Yes.
I couldn't imagine, again, if you were questioning your self-worth and then people were gaslighting and feeding more into your yeah, it would have been tough for you to pull out, but you did, and you've actually taken yourself away from that, listen to a
Yeah.
friend. And also, your job doesn't define who you are as a person. That's what I think.
No, no,
Mm,
it doesn't.
no, no,
Neither does your business, but
no.
who you are to other
Yeah,
people
yeah,
does define you as a person, I feel, you
exactly,
know? Mm.
exactly. So, how did you separate your identity from the success or failure of a business?
Well, that's a good question. Um, it's hard when you work as much as I do.
Mm,
When you put every ounce of energy and brain and life into an idea. Now I've always been in like sort of an entrepreneurial sort of role, so there's been ideas and there's
mm,
been some really good things, but because I'm a team player, ultimately I've always kind of seen the good stuff as us,
mm,
but it doesn't always turn out the same way. When it doesn't go so well, then you go, oh, that's me,
me.
right?
Mm,
So it actually was something I had to do very, very consciously
mm,
to make sure that I didn't own that I didn't take on the ownership of um of the negativity and the bad you know bad business decisions or whatever. But you know
mm,
in the tech world, in the startup world, we have something called um so they call it fail fast, right? So that you
yeah.
can learn, and then it's very prominent in the US as well. The whole Silicon Valley is all about fail. So
Mm,
we call it learn, fail fast, and learn, learn. And
mm,
so when something gets, so you have to kind of go, okay, well, and I use also the analogy of putting out a fire, right? So you go, okay, let's put out the fire right now, and then we look at everything and we analyze it, and then we see how we do
yeah,
not end up with a fire or a crisis again like that, and
yeah,
what can we learn from it. So that's kind of been my go-to for making sure and doing and we're bringing the team into that as well, because it's never a single person that does something wrong.
yeah,
I mean, there are
yeah,
some people that do really bad stuff, but I'm not going to go there.
yeah. So, with everything going on in your life, what helped you move on or move forward after that experience?
So if thinking about stepping out of my tech company,
Mm,
it was really I signed myself up for an entrepreneur resort, because why not, in Bali? And I went to that, and it was an interesting experience. So it was about 10 of us. We had it was a week or whatever, and we did all these sort of tests of how wealthy you are and whatnot, and all these where you sit on different scales. And I was feeling more and more and more and more depressed.
mm,
I was like going, oh my gosh, I don't know where my next money is going to come from. I don't know where these things are. And then I can't remember what happened first, but some I think it was actually, and it's quite funny because I have a podcast as well called Vitalify Unplugged, and we our next season is about wealth, but not financial wealth, but wealth in general.
yeah,
And at this resort, we were measuring wealth. Oh, we did like the wheels of life, the pillars of life,
yeah.
8 pillars of life, and wealth was one of them. And I felt so depressed over that. And then the mentor, who wasn't even there, she was in Queensland or something. And she said, well, but wealth to me means what you've got left when you don't have any money left. So it's your family, it's your friends, it's your
Mhm.
health, it's all those kind of things. And I thought, oh, okay. Well, I don't quite believe that, but okay. And then I went to bed, and then that night I just had this sort of epiphany, and I in the middle of the night. So I came back into the room the next morning, and I was dancing and singing as I walked into the room. So something had let go, and I'm not
Yeah.
going to analyze what it was or whatever, but it was just like, wow, there is something there.
Mm,
And then I got to do a TEDx talk, and like that just happened while I was there, and I got approached for a new role, and I was going, wow. So I got out of
yeah.
that way. So chances, but think that this thing about being open. So I've always said
Yeah.
my long-term plan is to be open to the next opportunity that presents itself. But that's kind of not really worked that well in the last few years. But I
Yeah.
think being open to, well, it actually has. It's
Mm.
just the way we measure success isn't necessarily commensurate with what I've achieved. Right? But
Yeah.
being open to things that come to you and accepting them for what they are,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
I think that that really helped. Sorry, I
Yeah.
talk a lot.
No, you're right. So just being open to new things. So your book, you wrote your first book later in life. What
Yeah.
inspired you to finally tell your story?
I always felt like I had a fun story, like an interesting story to tell because I lived so many different places. And
Mm.
we moved to Botswana when I was 13. I was the only student, white student out of 900, and we went on safaris and all that sort of stuff. And then, so I always felt like, and then I went and studied in the UK and I came out here. And so I felt like I've lived an interesting life, but I also felt that I'd had some, um it's called adversity, like some things that happen to me that shouldn't necessarily happen to people throughout life
Mm.
and things. So, but I also at the stage when I started writing 2 years ago, and I thought I could do it in 3 months.
Mm.
um, but I was kind of building a coaching business, working with a lot of women, interviewing a lot of women, and I just heard so many people who had the same things. And then I saw
Mm.
people around me fall off with burnout or mental health issues or whatever. So I felt that writing my book and sharing my story could help others. So that's kind of why I did it now, because I'm going, well, if I write it in a certain way, some fun, some stories and that sort of stuff, but also in a way that it's a self-help book, or I call it a
Mm.
thrival guide.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what got me to do it, because I felt that I'd probably been sitting on a story for a long time,
Yeah.
and I had a name for it for 10 years, but I never thought I'd write a book until I
Mm.
suddenly decided that I was going to do one before my 61st first birthday, which I didn't complete, but I had started it at least.
Yeah, you had a goal anyway. So,
Yeah.
just listening to you there, you've written the book and you were saying, it's sort of to help others, but the writing process would have helped you understand yourself and your journey in a deeper way. Can you talk to us about how you sort of, I don't know,
Yeah, yeah.
peeled the onion layers off, so to speak, to understand yourself a little bit better?
It was an interesting book to write as well, because I kind of, my father's passed away, and my mother and my
Mm.
stepdad are still around, and as most women, we have interesting relationships with our moms. Uh, so I was very cautious in the beginning about what I was writing, because I didn't want to upset people,
Mm.
right? So then, so when I first, like I said, I thought I could do it in 3 months. I wrote 25,000 words in no time. And then for 10 months, I was just regurgitating those words and trying to put them into different structures and all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
So I guess I had writer's block, but I had an accountability partner and all that sort of stuff. But I was still just doing that until I decided before Christmas 24 that I was just going to sit down and write things down. But so going through the book and going through the stories and going deeper into them and getting feedback from people. So I've used AI quite extensively in putting structure
Mhm.
and things like that, but I also have a human muse that helped me, plus
Yeah.
a couple of other people that I've read through as well. But I wanted more story there, because I do tend to sometimes just kind of go, oh, well, that was it, and it was painful, so I'm not going to talk too much about that, But
Yeah.
I actually had to sit in that
Space. Mm.
yeah, and learn to do that, and discovered things about myself that I had no idea, like um because we moved around so much as a child. I kind of always had to get like I became very good at getting new friends,
Mm.
and of all ages and walks
Mm.
of life, right? So it didn't really matter to me what age or whatever. But then I also developed this thing that if somebody, so I remember doing this with a friend. I said, "Oh, do you want to come out?" And she'd go, "Oh, I'm not sure." And so, okay, and I'd go and find somebody else, right, to play with. And this is, and I realized I'd done that since childhood, but I also do it kind of still now in my 60s. I kind of go, "Oh, okay, you don't play, find somebody else," right? But I'm not
Mm.
being negative. I'm just going, right now, I'll still go and play with those people in any
Mm.
case. So just little quirks like that. I think
Yeah.
some of the things that I hadn't talked so much about was, living in Botswana was just absolutely fantastic. It was such a rewarding, joyful time of my life from 13 till 15. I was probably quite a young 13 to 15-year-old because, well, I
Yeah.
was mature in the head, but I was kind of still a child.
Mm.
And that was fantastic. And then we came back to Norway, and that was a big eye opener because this was in the 70s, late 70s. Nobody,
Mm.
like me, we had two TV channels in Norway, no streaming, no internet, nothing like that. And I'd come home and tell people about, you know, giraffes and being stuck in the mud and hearing lions and having
Mm.
monkeys come up and take our stuff, or having a big elephant, you
Yeah.
know, and people just their eyes glazed over into
Yeah.
within 2 minutes, right? And since I've written the book and talked about it with my family, that was everybody had that experience, but we all just shut down.
Yeah.
So it was kind of funny. So we moved to a place where we obviously do not look like we fit in
Yeah.
Botswana.
Mm.
But we absolutely did. We were welcome. I totally felt like I belonged there, even
Mm.
if I looked very different to my friends. And
Mm.
then we came back to Norway, and it was like, okay, hang on. Oh, okay. So I don't quite. But
Yeah.
as a survivor I am, I just
Yeah.
find some new things to do and
Yeah.
things. But there was a lot of stuff there that we didn't really talk about, and
Yeah.
I know that I distanced myself from my friends in Botswana because it was so foreign, became so foreign.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So, Gry, you use the term neurospicy to describe the unique ways people think and experience the world. What does that idea mean to you?
So I use neurospicy about myself, and I understand that other people use neurodivergent and things. So
Mm.
that's an important distinction for me, because neurospicy is kind of a little bit more playful
Mm.
term um, that was made up by people who were neurodivergent who wanted that, but not everybody wants to do that. And there's some
Mm.
discussions out there about whether it's the right term to use and whatnot. So that's why I say
Mm.
it's important to me that this is how I describe myself, because this is how I like how my brain works. I like the little butterflies that go off in different tangents and things like that. It's hard for others to follow, but I have systems and processes in place that can help me. I mean,
Yeah.
I've worked in the tech world my entire life.
Mm.
So, but I think when I talk about neurospicy, and it was actually a young woman of color from in tech in Georgia in the US that said, "Oh, I'm neurospicy," and I'm like, "Oh, dang!" I thought, you know what? I'm going to borrow that term. May I?
Oh,
I'm
bless.
going to take it. So it's really that and I think everybody is on all
Mm.
sort of spectra, right?
Yeah, I often say
Whatever
that.
that is, right?
Yeah.
so, so but I think that we live in a world that's very linear,
Mm.
yeah, very systematic, and I needed systems to kind of function in that world, so I became like the systems person. I put systems in place and project management and all that sort of stuff. And then
Mm.
in my late 50s or 50s and 60s, I thought, okay, like being creative. I like making cool stuff and things like that. So, which I've been able to do all my life, but
Yeah.
in my career, but not in the sort of, fun kind of way. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's so I think we're all on the spectrum. I think on
Mm.
some spectra, I
Yeah.
should call it. Actually, my custom GPT that I use for my speaking is called Spectra.
No, I love that. I love
So,
that. Yeah, you're so right there. I think there's, when you look at the spectrum, that, everyone's got traits of that. It's just
Yeah, yeah,
what some people might have extremes, or they may have
yeah,
anxieties on
yeah,
top of that. So that, again,
yeah,
it affects everyone in different ways, because again, I
yeah,
think a lot of people, when they take those tests, there's so
yeah,
many that come out saying, yes, you've got some kind of level there, but I
yeah,
think that's just being human. I think we all,
yeah, yeah,
our brains are, they say we're only using 1/10 of it. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, and
And
it's just like, wow, imagine if we could tap into that other 90%. And I think that's where people like yourself on the creative side are
yeah,
tapping into the
mm,
other side as well, a little bit, probably using our brain a little bit better than what everyone else is
yeah,
in
yeah.
that regard. So,
Mm.
just with your experience, how can people start to see differences as their strengths rather than their flaws?
Yeah, that's a challenging question. I think it's really about own the first thing that I said before as well. Don't think that everybody else thinks of you the way that you think of you, right?
Mm,
But it's like when um when there's something that you think gets in your way. So I'm just going to take a little segue here because I have friends who go through menopause and suddenly their beautiful neurospicy brain, they can't handle it. They
mm,
can't project manage it anymore, right?
yeah.
And so they're going like, okay, well, there's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just that menopause is a horrible thing.
And
And that's for,
your brain is changing.
yeah, your brain is changing. And then it gets in the way of your beautiful
Mm,
side of your brain as well. So I think how do you turn differences into your superpower or celebrate? I think we all need to do it together, right? So I think it's
mm,
our collective responsibility to turn
yes.
differences into something beautiful. So I always talk about masking and unleashing potential, whether that's human or whatever. And when you if you drop a mask, right? Because I don't know about you, but when I talk to people and I kind of share a story, oh my gosh, they'll tell you their whole life story,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Right? So then you've dropped your own mask, and that gives other people
Mm,
your authenticity. Then gives other people
yes.
permission to share, right, what they're
Yeah.
doing. But then you've also at the same time helped somebody else drop one of their masks, right?
Mm,
And things. So I think I think we can't just go. I'm just going to be me.
no.
I think we should all just be ourselves, but not worry too much. And I was just talking to, um, I've had a young relative staying with me for a while, and they're really, they're they're neurodivergent and wonderful person, right? Wonderful, powerful, strong person, but gets worried about the little things, and they
Mm,
nibble away on their confidence and their
yeah.
brain power and things. I don't know if we could just see
Yeah.
that sort of thing, but also be around people and help other people be seen as well. So I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the thing for me. And I
Yeah.
just wanted to just in terms of being on a spectrum, I think it's really important to recognize that for some people it is. So I have friends who are medicated, they're chosen to
Mm,
be medicated. Some are all the time, some of them just when they do certain things. I mean, there's so many people that choose to do it. So I think it's really important to recognize that what works for me doesn't necessarily work for everybody else.
mm,
And it's, yeah, we're all on the spectrum. And if you need that for a period of time,
mm,
that's whether that's, a reason or a season or a lifetime doesn't really matter. It's whatever makes you happy, right? Some
yeah.
positive vibes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, in regards to, you were talking about workplaces earlier,
Mm.
and you talked about your experience of being in the workplace. What would workplaces and communities look like if they truly embrace diversity of thought and experience?
Question. That is the question that I try to answer for people in the workplaces. But I think so. What happens when you create a truly inclusive workplace is that people start feeling safe, right?
Mm,
So then they feel the psychological safety to actually share who they are. And when
mm,
you share, ideas come up, right? And
Yeah.
then ideas develop together, and that's when we get true innovation, and then ultimately real impact um, in our lives, in our businesses, in the world. Hopefully,
Mm.
there's some
Yeah.
people who need to listen to me that are ruining our world at the moment. No, sorry.
Yeah. So just further on that, your work speaks a lot about belonging. What
Yep.
does that really mean to you?
Well, I think so it means a lot of things. It means that you feel safe, but it also
Mm.
means that in so I often talk about diversity, inclusion, and belonging. So diversity is having a seat at the table,
Mm.
inclusion is having a voice, and belonging is having your voice heard,
Mm.
right? And that's not my definition. That's by a couple of DEI experts in the world, but I like to um, use that term because I think the sense of belonging is when you can be your full self. There's a lot of organizations that say, "Oh yeah, everybody can bring their full self to work," but not really.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't think that you should be able to bring your full self if you're a really cranky day and things like that. You can, but it's kind of like being cognizant of it. But I think the most important thing is that we also recognize something called intersectionality. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's kind of just because we're both white women,
Mm.
50 plus, doesn't mean that we're anything like each other, right? So
Mm.
if I look at my intersectional challenges, I'm a migrant. People don't really treat me as a migrant because I'm fair skinned, right?
Mm.
And I'm over 60. I mean, I'm a woman. Heavens forbid I have an opinion, right?
Mm.
I've worked in tech all my life, and I got a self-proclaimed neurospicy brain. So those are my kind of things, but somebody else might have some totally different things. So I think it's really important that we open up and listen, and that's in the workplace, that we
Mm.
recognize that we all have totally, and that's what intersectionality in a very sort of nutshell means, that we all have our unique perspective of what discrimination and oppression means,
Mm.
right? So it's not there's no there's no golden definition of this. It's just that what might it's the same as with trauma, right? What
Yeah.
might be like an everyday thing for somebody, it could be massive lifelong
Yeah.
trauma for somebody else, right?
Yeah.
But it's just that we are different, and that is so we can't do it all by ourselves, but by being a good person, a good human that
Mm.
actually gives other people space to contribute and be themselves, whatever
Mm.
that is. That's when we start opening up
Mm.
for full belonging, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
It's really about being kind to each other and
Yep,
supporting each other in the
absolutely.
workplace.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Kind, not nice.
Yes,
So there's
kind.
a big difference, big
Yeah.
difference
And
between kind
and
and nice, isn't there?
and unconditional kindness is
Yeah,
is the
absolutely.
key, not
Yeah,
kindness where you expect something back. So
yeah, yeah.
anyway, so
Yeah.
Gry, if positive vibes are really about embracing who you truly are, what does
Mm.
authenticity look like in life today?
For me,
Yes, for you.
ooh, uh, it's um, it's actually about showing up as who I am and daring to be me, so
Mm.
that I can actually then uplift others in that process. So not hiding any. Yeah, okay, so I can, I don't have to say everything out loud all the time, but it's about first of all being the inclusive leader and person that I am, and then
Mm.
uplifting other people in that process, and whether that's through speaking or my podcast or my book, or I'm working on some innovation projects at the moment which are
Yeah,
amazing. So I do a lot of work around AI as well, and being good parents to AI, so ethical AI and stuff. So it's kind
yeah,
of bringing all together the human and the machine, you know?
yeah. Sounds
So I
great.
don't know if that,
Sounds great.
yeah.
So, Gry, where can listeners connect with you and learn more about your book and your work?
You can, my website is probably the best one. LinkedIn is where I probably look the most. But if you go to my website, which is grystene.rocks or .com, but I like rocks. So it has links to my book. It has links to my speaking. And yeah, and it's got my phone number and emails and everything there. So, but that's the best place to do, and it is work in progress, always improving and putting more on there. But maybe I should take some of it off because it's a little bit much at the moment. But yeah, because I
Yeah.
work across speaking, AI and innovation. I do coaching, and then I've written a book, and
Wow.
I look in, and I have a deep interest in the health and wellness or health and vitality space. So that's where my
Yeah.
podcast is. So I'm kind of like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Absolutely, absolutely incredible, just the vast range of what you cover. I'm sure there's many listeners out there that will look you
Mm,
up, Gry. And
yeah, wonderful.
finally, what final encouragement would you give someone learning to trust their own unique wiring?
I'm going to quote one of my, I have a total girl crush on Mel Robbins.
Ah, yes.
So I'm just going to throw it out there. Just let them. When somebody else
Yeah.
does something that upsets you or whatever, just let them, and then let yourself be who you are. Because that's what
Mm,
she really talks about with that let them
yeah.
theory. And I need to look up some of her mantras because it's all about, being open to receiving and things like I don't
Yeah.
really have a girl crush on her, but I think she's got some fantastic, well researched books and ideas. So that yeah, I don't know about you, but I'm a little bit of a road rager, and now I just go. Yeah, when people did, I don't know. Have you ever driven in Perth? Because people drive very slowly, and it's annoying. And so now I just go, let them, and let me just sit here and listen to my radio.
Mm. I think in my younger days, I used to call myself the middle lane loony person that used to weave in and out of people. But as I've got older, I've got a bit more gracious with my driving and just think, well, I'm just not meant to get there on time. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't stress
Maybe
so
you're
much.
maybe
Mm.
you're like one of those just in time people like me. I'm always
Yeah,
just in time. I'm not
just in
late. I'm
time,
just in time.
just in time. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Well, Gree reminds us that qualities we sometimes try to hide may be our very things that make us powerful. When we
Mm,
stop trying to fit into someone else's mold and start honoring who we truly are, we create space not only for ourselves, but for others to do the same. This is Positive Vibes with Nicki Dennis, sending you all love and positive vibes. And thank you, Gree, for sharing your wisdom and your experience and your book and knowledge with us here today.
Thank you, Bradley.
Bye for now.